Ross Beatty, the chairman of Alterra Power, thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
How quickly do you think that the energy matrix that we currently live in, how fast do you think this is going to change from oil and gas, from fossil fuels to renewables and solar power, all these sorts, geothermal, these sorts of things? How fast do you see this transition happening? There's no one better equipped to answer that question than you are.
Well, for sure we're in a fundamental transition right now. This is as profound an energy revolution as the change from wood to coal or coal to oil. It's totally fundamental, and it's happening very quickly, actually. We're right in the middle of it. And it's an energy revolution in every sense, in type of energy and in type of use. So there are so many dramatic innovations and technological changes and cost changes. For example, in renewable energy, in generation, also in transmission, and also in end use. Big economies like the American economy today are using less electricity than they did 5 years ago. And that's because of energy efficiency. So there's just as many revolutions in that area. Better light bulbs, better refrigerators, less energy consuming goods of all kinds, as there is in the energy generation world, where there are profound and incredible changes happening today that are disruptive as hell. There's winners and losers in all areas.
So the biggest criticism, especially over the last 5, 10 years, of renewables and alternative to fossil fuels has been cost, and that none of these things can really survive without government subsidies.
Absolutely.
Is that true moving forward? Where's that going?
It couldn't be less true today. It was true 10 years ago. We needed subsidies, and the subsidies created the economies of scale that today have driven these incredible drops in prices. So just take solar, for example. Solar today costs less than 1/10 what it did 10 years ago. Less than 1/10. Wind is probably 1/3. To generate a kilowatt of wind power is, today we can build wind farms that make money at 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour. That was unheard of 5 years ago. So pretty much everything people think about renewable energy that they might have learned 5 years ago is not true today anymore. So forget it. The people who say we need subsidies, we need incentives, that used to be true, but it's not true anymore. And it's all about economics. The more you use something, the less it costs typically. So we're building an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude more solar panels today with better technology, therefore lower cost. Therefore we can use more solar in more places. And that just feeds on itself. It's going to be kind of like that, I think, in electric cars. You're going to see more and more people adopt it because it's, first of all, it's a cool type of transportation. It's very, very fast and very quiet and very clean. But also, as costs come down, people are going to be able to afford it more, and it will be more and more competitive against the internal combustion engine. It's just like that in generation, solar power and wind power particularly.
The world that Elon Musk has described, this world where solar panels on the roof of your electric car, on the roof of your home, and this is essentially powering much of your life. How far away are we from that?
You know, Elon Musk
he's
a brilliant innovator and great thinker. But he's also got a vested interest in what he's talking his own book. So, I would say it's going to take a little bit longer than perhaps he might be prophesizing, but it will come. It will come. It will come because it makes sense, and we've seen everything that we've seen in the last, say, 10 years leads me to the certainty that it will get here eventually. And I'm not sure if it's going to be 5 years or 15 years, but it's not going to be 50 years.
So as these alternative energy forms take over, you traveled the world, you've met with world leaders on every continent. What is this going to mean for the politics of the world as energy is essentially rebalanced and almost, flattened around the world? What does that mean for countries like Russia and Canada, these energy superpowers today?
It's really disruptive. It really is a disruptive thing. And as I said, there are going to be winners and losers. So for example, Morocco doesn't have any oil of its own. It's building massive solar farms in the desert, and it'll supply electricity not just to Morocco. I mean, 5,000 megawatts, for example, that's a lot of solar. It'll supply solar power to its own people, and it'll also supply it to Europe, which will mean they don't need to burn gas, they don't need to burn oil, they don't need to burn coal, and they don't need to generate nuclear power. So those transitions are going to be severely disruptive. Russia and its fundamental mono-economy based on export of oil and gas to drive all of its national and many of its individual investments, it's really going to have to rethink what it's doing. Countries that rely on coal are going to have to rethink what they're doing and get with the transition or be left behind. And I have to say that it's a possible concern in the United States, although the U.S. is such an innovative and dynamic country that even if you have you could say regressive leadership in certain places, you have such progressive leadership in the business sector, and individuals are so progressive here that I really think the U.S. will remain a world leader in this transition in many respects.
There seems to be this disconnect between the Western world that's certainly from governments all the way down are pushing these renewable energies and being vocal about it, to what we're seeing in the developing world, where they still seem to be adopting this, old style economy and fossil fuels and along these lines. What are you seeing that disconnect changing?
Totally.
What's happening there?
Totally. I mean, the leader in the world right now in renewable energy, and it's been like this for the last at least almost 10 years now, the world leader is China. The world leader. They're building more renewable energy in China than the rest of the world put together. They're pushing more electric cars. They're pushing more transmission innovations. They're pushing across, and they can do that in a dictatorship. They just, the president says, thou shalt do this, and the whole country follows. But it's very much having the result of cleaning the air in China. It's going to happen. Getting rid of some of the very polluting, very hazardous businesses and industries, and radically modernizing their systems so that they will be able to thrive in the future in a way that other countries might not. For example, Russia, which isn't doing this. For example, other places in Eastern Europe, even other countries in Asia. So really, even in the developing countries, there are leaders taking action today, and there are people who are still living in the past. And that's been pretty much normal for all of human history. There are countries that succeed and countries that don't. Even if they're undeveloped or lesser developed, there are still leaders who get it and who are making the changes, and there are leaders who don't get it and aren't making the changes.
You're certainly someone who lives in the present and in the future with what you're doing with Alterra Power, which is pretty revolutionary. Walk me through what you're actually doing.
Well, Alterra isn't particularly revolutionary. It's just a clean energy company. What we're trying to do is generate electricity without using fossil fuels of any kind. And we're trying to do that to make more megawatts with less pollution. I'm a committed believer in global warming. I think it's got some real obvious sources. It's very much human caused today, and it's because we burn too much stuff into the air of all kinds. So the less we burn, the less harmful it's going to be for the atmosphere. And yet we don't have to slow down our economy because there are all these alternative energy sources: wind, hydro, solar, and geothermal. Those are the 4 pure, clean technologies that make electricity without having fossil fuel emissions. And so that's what I've been trying to do in my own little way. It's not a huge company. It's about $1 billion enterprise value today. But we are very, very quickly growing. We're building wind farms in the U.S. like crazy right now. It's a wonderful place to build wind generation. We're just building 2 solar farms in the U.S. One is on a Superfund site in Indiana. We just finished that last year, called Kokomo. And we're building another solar farm right now in the University of Michigan, Michigan State University, over car parks.
Right.
So, we're taking advantage of space that's already being used for parking lots, and we're putting a solar farm on top of that. And I just think it's great, that kind of thing. We're able to do it economically. We have a large geothermal power business in Iceland, and we have a very large hydro power business in British Columbia. So we're kind of spanning all 4 of the technologies. And in that business, for me, it's very exciting because I'm living the revolution. I'm part of it, and I'm learning about it, and it's so dynamic that it's just a huge amount of, for me, just personal enjoyment. Feeling like I'm part of something that is economic. You can make money at it, but you can also do the right thing, I think, for the future of my children and their children and their children. So it feels good to be doing it.
Well, Ross, in the resource sector, you're an absolute legend in terms of what you've done, and you may dispute that term, but that is how you are known. You're a guy that has vision and wants to build something big. What is your vision for Alterra? Where is this going? Where do you want to see it?
Well, you can never be big enough when you're in the energy business, because the simple thing about building an electricity company is it's all about the cost of capital. And the cost of capital, as you build something bigger, as you build a bigger enterprise, more secure, less risky, better for investors, institutional investors particularly, you are driving down your cost of capital, and you're making money per se, because there's so much finance in this business that the low cost of capital companies are the ones who are the big winners. And that comes with scale. So really, we're just trying to build as big a company as we can. We're always looking to acquire other companies, and other companies are looking to acquire us. So that's just how it works. At the end of the day, for me, it's all about trying to build as big a company as I can in the clean energy space.
Okay, this is going to be a tricky question for you. Obviously, you want investors to invest in Altera. If you were an investor looking at what's happening with oil companies today, would you put your money in an oil company given what you see happening right now?
You know, oil is going to be around for a long time. It's a fundamental building block of any industrial economy. We're not going to get out of the oil business. But in terms of growth, in terms of companies that are going to go from small businesses to large businesses, it's going to be very hard for oil companies to grow much bigger. There's a lot of countries which want to decarbonize their economies, use less oil, less gas, less coal. So that's a very, very negative force in terms of companies' ability to grow. So the growth is going to come in companies like ours that have the ability to get into a space which people want to be in, governments want to be in, and in fact, the world needs to be in. And that's the clean energy business. So that's one of those situations where you're not going to lose. I mean, there's always going to be oil companies as long as I live and my kids live, but they're not going to prosper, I don't think. And the clean energy business is a growing space. It's where you want to put your money, I think, and it's where we're focused on, and I'm personally focused on very much.
Well, Mr. Beatty, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for the interview.
Become a RiskHedge insider for free by visiting RiskHedge.com. Each week, you'll receive vital analysis on today's geopolitical, financial, and social risks. Just visit RiskHedge.com today to become a RiskHedge insider.